I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So before we do get started though, I want to tell you all a little bit about myself. My name is Brennan Horton. I'm the instructor here with Veterans Upward Bound. I teach mostly math and some technology such as this, like we're doing Microsoft Excel, we can do Microsoft Word, things like that. But in terms of math, I do everything from basic elementary algebra all the way through Calculus 2. If you need instruction or tutoring or help with your math homework, or if you need to get ready to go back to school, then you can reach out to me for one-on-one instruction, and then we'll do some workshops for math as well. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to open Excel and walk you through some of the basic user interface of Excel. So whenever you first open up Excel, you're going to get a screen like this. You'll have some recent files that you can open down here, and then you'll have up here, you'll have some different options. Really all we want to worry about for the most part when you're using Excel is going to be this blank workbook. So if we open up a blank workbook, this is a new fresh workbook. This is not what we're going to be working with today. We're going to actually look at a specific one that I've already prepared, but I just want to guide you through the interface. So first things first, there's a lot going on. And so we're just going to focus on just a couple of things today, and then in future workshops we'll be doing several Excel workshops. We'll go into some more details. So the first thing I want you to notice here is up at the top you have this autosave button. I've got it turned off. If you click this, turn it on, you can set it to autosave your documents. So that'll help you in case you mess up, your computer crashes. Turn that on, that way you don't lose your files. Then the next thing I want you to notice here is we have several tabs here at the top. Today we're only going to be looking at the File, Home, and Insert tab. So if I click on the File tab here, this brings us back to that first page. But here on the side, we've got this new bar here. We can open a new. If we click on this, it'll open another document. If we click on Open, we can open a document we already have saved. Or if we go to Save or Save As, we can save our document. So for example, I'll go ahead and save this one. Go to my desktop, and I'll save this as just book 1. I'll just leave it like it is. Now here in the Home tab, if you've ever used Microsoft Word before, these first couple tabs here will be exactly the same, but the rest of this will be specific to Excel. We're not going to really bother with most of this today, but if we go in here and I say type my name, and I want to make it bigger, so I want to select this, and I go up here and I change the font size. I can change the font size, or I can change the font type. If you want to format your Excel document to look a little nicer, you can do that. And then finally, here in the Insert tab, again, there's a lot of stuff, but today we're only going to be concerning ourselves with the Charts tab here. So we're only going to be making some charts. And now with that basic user interface out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get into our examples. So we're going to be looking at 3 different samples here. We've got a linear set of graph data, we have a set of random graph data, and then we're going to make a graph using an equation. So the first set of data here we have sample table 1. It's a linear graph data. So what that means in terms of algebra, if you're not aware, is these 5 set data points will form a straight line. So if I go over here and I select, and I select by left clicking and then left click and drag, I select these 6 boxes, so including the titles, and then I go to Insert, and then I go here to scatterplot. So again, that's Insert, and then under Charts, if we click on Scatter, we want to select this second option here. This creates a scatter plot with lines, so it includes all of our dots but gives us a line. This is fine, it's an okay graph, but the title doesn't really make sense. Let's say we're looking at a rectangle. So here we have our data, we have length and height. So we want to look at a rectangle's parameters. So we'll say rectangle. And we want to label the axes. Here we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 0 through 12 here. That doesn't really help us because we don't know which is which. So if we go here and click on our graph, so we just click on it so it highlights. Then we press the plus button here. That plus button, then we come down to axis titles. That will give us titles on each of the axes. So then if I double click on the axis title, I can begin typing in here. And let's say for this one, this is going to be length. And then for this one, this will be height. So here we've just created a very basic graph We've changed the title and we've changed the axis titles. All right, now we want to look at a different case. So here, in this case, sample 2, random graph data, it's not going to form a straight line. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing we did before. We'll go in here, we'll go to Insert, Charts, Scatterplot, and we'll do the same one again. So here, this time what we've gotten is we've got dots connected by a line, but the line's a zigzag. It's not a straight line. Now, imagine we have a case where we have 20 data points and we want to find the average line that goes through them. We call that a trend line. This isn't very helpful. We don't want to draw a line like this. We want the line that goes through the middle. So let's go ahead and take our data here. Let's copy this data and let's paste it down here, and let's go ahead and extend it a few more. Let's make it 10 values, okay? And these are kind of random values. I selected these earlier. So we'll have 8, 4, 7, 3, and 1. So we've just kind of extended it, made it a little bit longer, just so you can see the effect a little bit better. And we'll go ahead and go into Insert and Charts. And this time, instead of choosing the one with the line, what we're going to do is we'll just choose the random dots. So that'll be scatter here. Next, what I want to do is I want to go in here and click on my data points. So it doesn't have to be any specific point. Just click on one of the points. It can be any one of them. And then whenever we click on it, we right click and we'll see an option to add trend line. So if we add trend line, it'll automatically add a straight line through it. Now that's not going to be all that useful for us in this case, because what we really want is we want a line that's going to follow along with the graph. So what we can do in that case, in this particular case, a polynomial would fit better. So if we choose here the polynomial option, we can see already a polynomial of order 2 that follows the data points a lot better. And then if we click here, we go to order 3, we can see that by increasing the order of the polynomial, it fits a little bit better. So that's how you get a trend line. If you're doing it for a lab, another thing you might want to do is to display the equation of the graph. So if we click on this checkbox, that'll show the equation. Here I'll show you for a linear graph that's maybe an equation that might make a little bit more sense for some of you. And again, if we click on this trend line again, we can go back here. And another thing we might want to display is the R squared value. R squared value, that tells us how closely related the trend line is to the data. So for an R squared value, you want it to be very large. You want it to be close to 1. So 1 means 100% accuracy. So if we go in here into polynomial, we'll see that for an order 3, it's close to 0.5, which is much better than when we were looking at linear, where it's 5 times 10 to the negative 5, which is basically 0. So there's like no correlation here, and when we use a polynomial, we've got a very good correlation. It kind of follows the points. Even though the points are kind of random, you can see it follows the points better that way. Next, we're going to look at a formula data. So in this case, we want to look at what happens when we use an equation. So let's look at a basic equation. We'll say y is equal to 2x. So a very simple algebraic equation. What we want to do then is we want to take our inputs here and get our outputs. So our inputs would be x and our outputs would be y. So what we do is we type into this little cell here, and then we come up here to this bar up here at the top, and we start typing. We type equals, and then we're going to do 2, and we use asterisk for multiplication. And then we'll come in here and we'll click on the cell. So we click on this cell, and that does 2 times the value in the cell. So that value is 1, so we expect to get 2 times 1, and we get 2. Now, what we can do now is we can hover our mouse over this little box on the corner of the cell, this little green box, and we can click and drag down, and it will copy the formula into the values below. So here we see this is cell B20, and so this is 2 times B20. This one is cell B21, so here we can see it's 2 times B21, and it carries down. We can click and drag this all the way down, or what we can do instead, let's say if you have a very large set of data, you have 400 points of data. If you just double click on this box, it'll copy it down to the last value here. So if you have a lot of data and you need to apply a formula, that's a good way to do that. Then again, we can just go ahead and create a very basic chart for that, so we can get a chart with a line with the points. Now we can do one other thing, and this is going to be the last thing we talk about today. Let's say we have an input and we have two functions. We have two outputs. So we have output 2 and output 3. Okay, and we'll go ahead and do 20 values again for this one. And let's say we use y is equal to x squared, and we use y is equal to 20x. Okay, so if we come in here, we do, in order to do x squared, what I do is I select my input, I do multiplication, and I select my input again. I press enter, and that gives us 1 squared is 1. We pull this down, we can see it's going to square each of those, or we can click on this, double click on that box, and it automatically fills down. Then again here, we do equals 20 times our input, press enter, it fills in, and we double click on this box, it fills down, and now we've got an input with two outputs. Now what we can do is we can go in here to insert, we go to charts, we go to scatterplots, and if we go in here to the second option here, what we get this time is we have two graphs, so we can compare two graphs against one another. So this is helpful for if you want to compare expected results against actual results. And that's all I wanted to go over today. We just went over some very basics in Excel, kind of how to do some really common tasks. I know you had a couple of questions, so I tried to go just a little faster. Who had the lab?
It was me, Domingo.
Okay. Is this kind of what you were looking for, the trend line? Is that's what you needed to do for your lab?
Yeah, that pretty much sums up what I needed to do. I just got to plot what the answers they gave me. So they gave me a outline to actually go into Excel and do it, but I actually seen it. I get the idea of it.
So I'll go ahead and do it again so you can follow along one more time, just so we can see it again. Okay, so if I go in here and I right click on any one of the data points, it doesn't matter which one, you get the add trend line option here. So when I click on add trend line, we have our trend line options. Now we have a number of different trend line options. Depending on the type of graph that you're expecting to see, you'll want to choose a type of line that's going to be similar to what you're expecting. So for example, if you're expecting a straight line, leave it as linear, don't change it. If you're expecting it to curve upwards, so you want an x squared kind of graph, you might choose the power. Or if you want a more complex polynomial, so x squared plus x, you would choose polynomial. And then if you want a cubic function, you would just change the order here. A logarithmic function is kind of the opposite of a power function. So whereas a power function is like x squared, where it starts off slow and increases rapidly, logarithmic increases rapidly and then slows down. And then finally, a moving average. You wouldn't want to use this because it's not really an equation, it's a piecewise function. This will give you a more accurate line, but it's not really a line, it's separate lines connected. So just make sure you don't do that. Your professor will count off if you use the moving average. I don't know what your data is going to look like. I'm going to guess it's probably going to be either linear or it'll be power. So one of these two. And if not those two, then polynomial. Did you have any other questions? Maybe about formatting the graph or anything like that?
Still remember how to do that. I was just actually putting in the graph that you actually did here.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
I see. For that, and for anyone else as well, you just click on your graph and you have this little plus here, chart elements. We can add our axis titles. We can do data labels. We can also do error bars. I wouldn't worry about that. Not in this case. We can do legend, which isn't really very helpful in this case, but it can be in some cases. And then we can go in and click in any of these and modify them. So we can change this to, I guess we had length and height. So length and height, and rectangle. And we can also go in and we can change up here in our home tab, we can change the font type. So I like Garamond, is a nice looking font. And we can make it bold, and we can increase the font size or change the color. So you can modify your graph like that. If you click on your data points, you can also change the colors. So when you double click on your data point, you get this little pop up on the side. So let me do that one more time. And we go to this fill bucket here. And if we go here, this is saying lines and markers. So if I go to marker, that'll change the dots. So let's say I want them to be black dots. That's the line. We want the fill. So we want a solid fill, and that's going to be black. So we've turned it into a black dot. Now that's only done the one, so if I double click again, I should be able to select all of them. And it's probably because I've got the trend line. But if you select all of them like that, we go in here, and then we go to markers, solid fill. We can make them all black. We go to line, say our solid line, and let's say we want to make it black as well. And here we also have a border. You can change the border color as well. Does anyone have any questions? All right, if we've not got any more questions, I guess we'll go ahead and call it there.